Hey, good Monday morning, everybody. BAM Weather Meteorologist Brett Waltz here, giving you a long-range forecast update, guys. I hope you all are having a fantastic Monday morning and enjoying the fall-like air across much of the country to start out your week. That's going to be a theme as we go over the next 7 days. Much colder than normal temperatures to close out the month of August, suppressing moisture down to the south as well. Won't be super active across the Midwest. More of the rains down in the southern plains. And then as we go throughout this video, we'll touch on: will we moderate? Will we warm back up? It looks like that could happen, but it might be brief. And then the potential for multiple additional fall-like fronts as we go through the middle part of September. So let's start this morning with a look at the current temperatures as of 8:15 a.m. Eastern time, guys, this morning. Starting to maybe warm up a little bit, but look how cool it got across parts of the northern plains. Outlying areas here getting down to 36, 37, 38 degrees in parts of Minnesota and North Dakota. If we go further down to the south, you can see 40s all the way down into parts of Iowa. If we go back a couple of hours here on our Clarity platform, we can actually see that some 40s got all the way down into parts of Indiana and Illinois last night. You can see, again, mainly in outlying areas, but some localized 40-degree temperatures on August 25th of all days of the year. Some record-breaking cool air possible as we go over the next several days, and we can see that here. If we start out with tomorrow morning, you can see the circles that you see, 13 of them, record-breaking cold lows expected at these stations. We've got 40s down through Iowa, central parts of Indiana and Illinois, some 30s across the far upper portions of the Midwest. That will continue as we work into your Wednesday. You can see, again, all of these circles, stations that are expected to break their record low temperatures for the day. 50s all the way down into Alabama, Mississippi. So just a notable cold air mass for this time of the year. We will begin to slowly warm things up as we work into the weekend and into early next week. But still, all things considered, guys, widespread 70s, low 80s all the way through Sunday of this week. Taking a look here at the rainfall potential, as we mentioned, the heavier rainfall threats will be suppressed further down to the south as we work over the next 7 days. It's going to lead to heavy rainfall potential across parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and southern Missouri. Further to the north and to the east, across the Ohio Valley and the Midwest, it will remain relatively dry. Now, I do think that as we start to moderate things a little bit later on the next 7 days as we work into the weekend, we may need to watch for some rainfall opportunities to redevelop in this region. That data is a little bit underdone with. Could also see some localized heavier totals in parts of Nebraska and northwest Iowa. But again, all things considered, certainly the heavier rainfall chances staying south as we go throughout the next 7 days. As we work beyond that, you can see next 7 days well below normal temperatures. We will begin to moderate things heading into the first week of September, but still averaging out cooler than normal across the south and east portion of the country, and that should continue to allow the better rainfall chances to set up across parts of the southwestern plains. I do think more rain can bleed further to the north and to the east as we go throughout this period. Not bone dry across the Midwest. In fact, some areas slightly wetter than normal. I also don't think that you're completely dry even in the Ohio Valley, but maybe not as widespread with the moisture throughout this period. So generally speaking, continuing with a slightly cooler than normal and a slightly drier than normal pattern for the eastern ag belt as we go throughout the first week of September. Kind of breaking this down day by day, you can see cooler air begins to slowly moderate and shift further down to the south as we start out the month of September. I do think that some warmer than normal days are on the table as we get into the early to middle part of next week across the Midwest and across the Ohio Valley, with, again, this cooler air kind of seeping further down to the south. However, keeping an eye on another front around the 7th of the month here, guys. You can see as we work towards the back half of the week 2 time frame, close out the first week of September, another shot of cooler air, another cold front likely to dive down across the ag belt and bring back below normal temperatures. Now, at this time, I'm not necessarily anticipating this to be as notable of a cold front compared to the one we have right now, but we're also, it's 2 weeks from now or so your normals are dropping. As we go further into this time frame, beyond this, into the second week of the month, probably going to need to start to watch for more widespread frost threats further to the north across the northern plains and the upper Midwest. Be sure to stay tuned for that because we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go throughout this video. Because if we take a look here, here's our first front. This is the one towards the end of the week 2 time frame to close out the first week of September. There's support from an SOI rise. That's our Southern Oscillation Index. That correlation as we go into September is cooler, the positive SOI, especially across the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest. And I think that's exactly what some of this data is trying to see here around the 7th of the month. And so, again, I think the week 2 time frame, probably a moderation in there, probably some warmer days, but going to end on a cooler note once again. And then as we get towards the second week of the month, this is where the signals actually intensify for even stronger fronts to return. If we look at the North Pacific, which typically does a good job of picking out these stronger cold fronts, you can see one here the September 9th to the 11th, and then maybe even a stronger one the 14th to 16th. There's also some potential signals of typhoon activity in the West Pacific that we'll need to keep an eye on as well. But with these signals, there's 3 solid cold front signals as we go into the second week of the month and through the middle part of September. If we take a look at potential pattern drivers from tropical forcing, right now, your upward motion centered across parts of the Indian Ocean, downward motion here across the Central Pacific. It's weak. It's not expected to be a strong signal, but if we take a look, that is more of a phase 2, MJO phase 2 type of idea with downward motion here in the Central Pacific, some upward motion in the Indian Ocean, and that typically, when combined with weaker global winds, are weak La Nina forcing. You can see here, it favors cold fronts. It favors shots of some cooler air. If we don't even factor in the global wind, you can see that it still, in the eastern half of the country, favors cooler than normal conditions. And, I think that we see that here in this 7 to 11 day time frame. When we moderate things a little bit, it's a little bit warmer to the north, cooler south and east. And then as we get the cold fronts in, this is when we see more of this signal in here. It also tends to favor drier risks for the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes as well, which is, an area that we're pretty consistently dry over the next 2 weeks with more moisture across the southern and the western plains. If we take a look at just a general overall look at the pattern as we go from the 7th to the 16th of the month, 3 cold fronts in here, potentially strong cold fronts. I think that if you're in the eastern 2/3 of the country, probably multiple shots of colder air in here as we go through the first half of September. So brief moderation to start out the month, but then reinforcing shots of cooler air. I don't think, based off what I see right now, that we are going back into a hot summer pattern. I think that, the North Pacific would have indicated that for a time. I don't see any signals as we get closer for that type of idea as things stand right now. And I think especially the second week of the month and into the middle part of September, plenty of additional fall fronts at play. And need to keep an eye on the West Pacific because there are some signals here around the 4th, 5th of the month that there could be some kind of a typhoon recurve, which would only go to enhance the cold front potential. With all of that in mind, we've updated our first frost time frame map here. If you are in this darker purple color, I think that as we go into the second week of September, there's a pretty decent likelihood that we are going to have a frost in this region. If you're in the pink area, I wouldn't even completely rule it out. If these fronts trend even a little bit stronger, if that typhoon recurves, could need to trend this even a little bit further to the south. But by the 3rd week of the month, you're at play, and that's going to include much of northern Iowa into parts of Wisconsin, Michigan, Des Moines by the last week of September, then potentially warming things up to close September and into October and being closer to normal or even slightly later than normal further south in the Ohio Valley and the Central Plains. And so need to keep an eye certainly on these fronts into the middle part of September for the northern plains, the upper Midwest, and parts of the Great Lakes for an earlier than normal first frost, something we are going to be keeping a very close eye on. A couple of analog years also support it 2011 has been an analog year for a long time. It had a very early first frost for a lot of areas across the ag belt. And so I definitely, especially if you were in this area here, kind of this pink line and points to the north, we need to be keeping a very close eye on these cold fronts as we move closer for frost potential. Taking a look at some updated analogs as we head into September. Overall, pretty much the same analogs we've had for a while. I took out 2024 because it's not a great tropical forcing match. I put in 2017 because it's very similar to how we're ending August. And I think that this shows kind of the general idea pretty well. Still need to, again, keep an eye on late September. Some more uncertainty in there that we'll talk more about in tomorrow's update. But overall, these combined would favor a cooler than normal pattern for the eastern third of the U.S. Very similar to what the CFS looks like over the next 30 days with warmth north and west, cooler air further south into the east. And if we take a look at our current September forecast here, guys, I think that what we will need to do is pull this below normal air further to the north and to the west, kind of through here, and shove some of the warmth a little bit further to the north and to the west. So we'll have a final update on September this week before our webinar on Thursday. Guys, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hope you have a great rest of your day.